Hello everyone and welcome to WGBS TV Live, brought to you by SupermanHomepage.com, the #1 Superman fan site in the world. In this, our March 31st, 2020 show, we're going to be covering a range of topics, including Zack Snyder's live commentary on Batman v Superman. We're going to be talking about when new Supergirl episodes are coming back, what's happening with the comic book market, and so much more. We're also going to be turning to you to take your questions and comments on any particular topic you would like to discuss. And as you can tell, I'm not joined by Michael Bailey. I'm joined by Neil Bailey. Welcome, Neil.
Hey, Steve. How you doing?
Doing well. Now, Michael unfortunately has had power turned off at his place due to whatever reason, and unfortunately cannot join us tonight. But he sends his regards and will join us again next week. But at a pinch, the other Bailey's joined us, and we're happy to have him. And it's a crazy time in the world, but good to have you, Neil. So how people can get involved in tonight's show? Well, if you're watching live via YouTube, well, participate in the comments there. Neil and I will check them out and respond to them as the show goes on, and we would love to hear from you and react to your comments as the next hour progresses. Unfortunately, we won't be taking calls tonight due to the fact that Michael is not with us, and things just get a little bit complicated when you're trying to do things as we are with a stand-in co-host. So we'll just refer to your comments on YouTube if you can participate there. We want to thank our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, John Patrick Van Pelt, and Tina Murray. We appreciate your support. Well, Neil, how are you holding up in this crazy world that we live in at the moment?
Well, I'm not walking around with an axe. I haven't typed all work and no play makes for a dull boy yet. But I am going a little stir crazy. I don't know about you.
Well, I guess people in our situation who work from home most of the time, the self-isolating is pretty much how we live our lives. But other than that's during work hours, but with family and the things going on around the world, just being able to get out there and exercise, or see your friends, go have a coffee, have some dinner or whatever. It's just everything has just changed, so it's just really weird, the world we are living in.
Yeah, I find myself wanting to do that one social thing that I did every week. Now it's gone.
The only thing I can do, and I can't do it anymore.
That's right.
Oh well, but as fans of entertainment and pop culture and Superman specifically, you would think that there wouldn't be too much of an influence with what's going on our world, but it is. Everything's affected, from not just family lives and health and everything like that, but everything down to your entertainment and your weekly distractions as far as pop culture is concerned. Neil's just frozen.
Got on you a little bit there, but
I'm saying everything's affected, even pop culture.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, I'm trying to basically do a Kickstarter, and I'm like, what do I do now? Because you don't want to be like, hey everybody, let's have fun, and there are people dying, or you don't want to be like, where are my comic books? At the same time you're like, I need comic books, It's a catch-22 of empathy meeting loneliness and desperation. But that's kind of being a geek too. So
yeah, exactly. Well, as you can see, I'm really self-isolating here. I've just gone up to a local cloud to take some time out.
That's pretty. Your background makes mine look sad. That's great.
All right. Well, we're starting with movie news as we like to do, and this week, even though there isn't really anything in the form of new news going on about the place, Zack Snyder surprised us all by saying that he was going to do a live watch party commentating on Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. He did that via Vero social media, his social media account. And I haven't yet sat down to watch this 3-hour event, but it's by all accounts, from what I've seen from people who have watched it or did tune in and watch it, he made some really interesting comments about the movie and explained some of the things, some of the decisions he made about certain aspects of Batman v Superman, which, let's be honest, is a much maligned film.
I've had my Batman v Superman reckoning lately because here I am self-isolating for the COVID virus, and my son is wanting to go outside, and we're wanting to go see people, and we're not doing it. And I'm basically taking my gravelly Batman voice and going, if there's even a 1% possibility that you could contract this virus, we must treat it as an absolute certainty. But you know, so Zack Snyder can have his day there in that respect. But yeah, it's not stood up very well to people attacking it. But I wanted to give it another look, and I might actually give this commentary a try, just to see, you know, how it has aged, even though it's been a couple of years. So
yeah, I mean, he describes he explains his decision behind killing off Jimmy Olsen. He, you know, talks about different aspects of the movie and the decisions made for the story. Justin in the comments is asking if you can join me in the cloud here. Well, Justin, only if you keep 2 arms lengths apart from me and maybe take the next cloud over, then yeah, you should be fine.
I'm gonna open up the chat. I'm disappearing for a sec to figure this out. There we go.
Yeah, it's on YouTube there. So yeah, it was Sunday, March 29th, 8 a.m. that Pacific time that he held this live event. And if you didn't catch it, well, you can tune in to the complete video on our website. We've got it in 2 parts, recording of the 3-hour event, so you can watch back Zack Snyder's commentary of Batman v Superman if you so desire. Now, on the other side of things, what was it about last year, maybe the year before, there was talk about a new Supergirl movie coming out or being put into production. We really haven't heard anything along the lines about that film. It was supposed to begin filming in early 2020. There's been no talk about whether that's happened or not, and now with the coronavirus, you know, everything, all productions have been put on hold. But this was supposed to see a 2021 release date. Now that's looking quite unlikely at this point in time. But the Gold Coast Bulletin here in Australia caught up with actor Michael Shannon to ask him if he'd ever consider returning to the role of General Zod for the upcoming Supergirl film if the story called for it. And he was surprised by the question, because he wasn't even aware that a Supergirl movie was in the works, and why would he? He's probably not following along like we are. But he says, I'd have to look into that. Zod again? I don't know. It's been a while. I'm a little older and a little creakier now. I'm not sure I could do all the moves.
It would be certainly interesting to see Zod in the Supergirl movie, but you'd think you'd want to give her own villain.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm interested. Do you know if it's related to the, you know how there were rumblings when Man of Steel initially came out that they were initially going to do a Supergirl kind of thing. They were heading in that direction. Is it related to that in any way, or is it all new?
It's really up in the air. I don't know. There was a lot of talk. A lot of people were speculating whether or not that empty pod that we saw in Man of Steel on the Kryptonian spaceship, whether or not that was Kara had maybe escaped from that, and you know but that would make her thousands of years old, because that had been buried under the ice for 10,000 years or whatever it was. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. And it won't be related to the Supergirl TV series, so I imagine it'll probably be a standalone film, especially now that we don't know what Warner Brothers are doing as far as whether or not Man of Steel is still in continuity as far as moving forward. We know that Ben Affleck is no longer Batman, and they're doing a new Batman movie with a new actor, but we don't know what Superman's status is or Henry Cavill's involvement.
It's funny because people are always complaining that the DC movies are not necessarily like the comic books, but you know, they've got the continuity just about the same as it is in the comic books. So you know, yeah, it's well, now the comic book, Supergirl's comic book, is supposedly well, in 2 issues, whenever that comes about, is ending. So we won't have a Supergirl comic book for the foreseeable future, unless they're planning on relaunching something with all this talk about a new 5G continuity that they're, you know, keep talking about. It really is all up in the air at the moment, especially the fact that Dan Didio is gone and what plans that they had in place with him, or whether or not Jim Lee, as the sole publisher there at DC, is continuing on with those plans
really, we just so much is just fluid at the moment. We just don't know where things are at with anything, TV, movies, or comic books.
It's been a long time since we haven't had a Supergirl comic book, hasn't it? Like since just before Loeb, right? With the reintroduction.
That's right. Well, we had that whole Supergirl Earthborn Angel. Was it Davis? David? What was his name?
Peter David.
Peter David. Yeah, I actually like that title, that storyline.
Yeah.
Even though it was a removal of what we're used to with Supergirl. The Earthborn Angel, whatever it was quite a novel telling of the Supergirl story. That died away, and then they relaunched Supergirl again. But she's always been this whiny teenage, woe is me, Krypton is dead, I don't want to be here thing of late. But let's hope if they do relaunch the Supergirl comic book at some time down the track, whether it's related to this movie or not, that she's more of a positive figure.
Yeah, hopefully they'll get some kind of cohesive thing going on. Even if they can't do the 5G or whatever, they can make it so that it actually locks in and at least they pick a philosophy and stick to it for once.
Yeah. Justin in the comments is asking, how will the Wonder Woman 1984 fit in? Well, the fact that it's a period piece, if you like, being set in the 80s, really it doesn't have to fit in at all. The first Wonder Woman film really kind of sat on its own, even though she has now been, or was originally introduced, if you like, in Batman v Superman, and then was in Justice League, and is still continuing. I don't know whether or not it has to fit in somehow, but it's really hard when you start in modern time, go back, and then come back, and then you've changed the Superman and the Batman that she was associated with. I don't know how. I don't necessarily. Marvel did the whole good. They've made a universe. I don't know if DC really needs to do that. Just do some great standalone films. It doesn't have to all tie into each other. In my opinion.
I'm kind of. It's a curious choice to do one period film and then do another period film. At the same time, there's so much with Wonder Woman that's kind of tied in the core of what came to be the modern Wonder Woman, tied up in the 70s and 80s depictions of the characters, that they're having trouble even keeping a modern take going in movies so much that they keep being referential. But I don't know. I'm curious to see what it'll be. Just because if they are trying to still build a universe, there has to be some kind of foundation. And if she becomes, as the most popular of the three in the movies so far, if she becomes the centerpiece and the linchpin, maybe they can build something from that. I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see. All right, so we tune now into the TV side of things, and Michael and I spoke last week about the fact that the episode of Supergirl that was scheduled to air, which was titled Deus Lex Machina, is now pushed back, and we weren't sure when we were going to see new episodes of Supergirl because of the fact that everything is on hold. All the productions have been stopped because of COVID-19. We don't know when. I mean, this is affecting television right across the board and movies as far as release dates are concerned, and productions and post-productions. Everything's shut down. Everybody's distancing themselves, and so our entertainment is suffering. But we have found out today, or this week, that the episode of Supergirl that was scheduled for March 29th will now be shown on April 26th. So 4 weeks delay in one episode to what we're supposed to see. So the CW are showing repeat episodes. They're going to be running the whole Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover 5 episode thing next week or this coming week. So there are things that we can watch, but they're things we've already seen if you've watched them.
Right. I think that it's kind of ambitious too to kind of say just a month. I bet you they go further. I wouldn't be surprised if they announce even more delays given how long this is going to stretch on.
Yeah, well, we knew from what we'd heard from some of the Supergirl cast members on social media that they had filmed pretty much all of this season's episodes and most of, if not all of, the finale. So they've got episodes in the can. I guess the fact is production and filming is just one side of things. If the post-production people and the music and everything like that, the editing, the special effects, if they're on hold or if they're being told to go home and stop work, then those episodes can't be finished and finalized for airing either. So
yeah,
we do know the CW has announced they're scheduling for, you know, Supernatural, Supergirl, Batwoman, and, you know, The Flash and all other shows, and when they will be rescheduling them too. And Sunday, April 26th, as I said, is the Supergirl return for new episodes. What happens further on down after those, after April 26th, I don't know. I don't know how many episodes they have available to air, but I guess we'll find out in about a month's time, or hopefully over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, hopefully things will be on an upturn.
Yeah, well, as far as this episode that is airing on April 26th, in this we find out that Lex proceeds to lay an intricate plan to bring Lena closer to him, defeat Leviathan's latest attack, and pit Supergirl and team against Leviathan. It is also revealed how Lex came into power after Crisis. So I guess we're going to be getting a very Lex Luthor heavy episode, and it's actually Melissa Benoist's directorial debut. So I'm sure she's looking forward to seeing this air on TV as her, being the director for the first time.
Yeah, it's too bad that it had to wait, but better safe than sorry.
Yeah, exactly. All right, as far as the Superman and Lois TV series is concerned, we don't know what's happening there as far as production is concerned. We do know that we've gone straight to series order, and they're not just doing the pilot and waiting to see how that goes and then going ahead after that. It's gone straight to an order for the whole series, but we don't know if production has taken place or where they're at as far as, you know, getting this together, because now with COVID-19 making everything stand still, it's really hard to know when we will see the pilot episode for Superman and Lois. But we have this week had casting breakdowns for some of the supporting characters, including Lana Lang and her family. We've got a description for General Sam Lane, for Morgan Edge, and all in all, having read the script for this myself, this is marrying up with what I've read, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of actors they cast in these roles.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Actually, I'm really excited for this story out of all of them. Just, you know, being a core Superman geek, I've watched some of the CW shows and I watched the Crisis thing, but this is the thing that's going to make me go and lock back in and give it a shot. Even I would watch probably a bad Superman show, even if it ended up, you know, not being subpar, but I'm excited for the possibility that it would be good.
Yeah, and having, as I've spoken before in past shows, having read the pilot, I'm really impressed with the script for the pilot, how well enmeshed it is, how much action there is involved, how heavy Superman is involved, because there was a lot of concern that it would be a Clark and Lois thing and their whole being grounded as just a family, and it wouldn't really be a superhero TV series. But it's really well balanced. The characters are really well written. The sons, his twin sons, are exceptionally well written and likable. And Lana and her family are an exciting addition to the story, because it's going to add a different dynamic and element to having Clark's old friend, ex-girlfriend, involved. Not that there's going to be kind of like a love triangle or anything, but just to see how that dynamic works.
Or even just Superman as a father in live action, which I can't think of a time that we've had that outside of the comics, have we?
Well, Superman Returns obviously showed him as a father, but that's him discovering that he had a son.
It was kind of the prelude to fathering, which is, I'm going to take that concept, put it in a box, and put it over there so that I don't talk about it.
John in the comments is asking, why does this sound like a spin-off of Smallville? Well, it's not really, because Superman is still Superman very much in this. He has married Lois. He has 2 teenage sons. He has gone from Metropolis back to Smallville in this pilot. I guess there's probably some resemblance or some connections that you can make, but I really feel like this is, one, an extension of the Supergirl series, where we see Tyler Hoechlin and Elizabeth Tulloch play those roles, but more so something of it in and of itself. We really haven't seen a family dynamic in a superhero TV series involving Superman, like we will see in this. And yeah, I can see some connections, and people will draw some parallels to Smallville, but I really think it's going to be an animal of its own.
Good thing with the Crisis too is that they can actually just pick and choose a little bit of things, and Superboy punching the wall, anything that they wanted to keep or not to keep, and make it work. So
Justin says, so will Superman's kids have piano lessons? They won't be throwing any pianos at villains from what I can tell. We're not in the pilot episode anyway.
Actually, on Krypton, the pianos are called Grortflorts. So,
yeah, not likely. So yeah, head to our website to check out the cast character breakdowns. If you're trying to stay spoiler free, then you might want to give them a miss. There really isn't too much in there, other than the fact that you find out who is involved in this pilot episode, what characters we will see, and some of the descriptions for those. But all in all, it's looking pretty good, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing more from Superman and Lois this year. But with the way the world is at the moment, who knows whether this show will get pushed back to 2021.
Yeah. Spring. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, it being the last show for the month, it is time for our regular monthly segments, and it kind of warms my heart that I get to do these with you again, because we kind of started these back, well, way back when we were doing Radio KAL.
'06?
Where, yeah, we obviously used to do them recording separately and doing it, chatting by text and then recording them and then editing them together
with Audacity and go, what? Oh, can't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, so, wow, I can't believe we actually did that back then, but here we are going live. Easier. Much easier. Less post-production time. No post-production time. But
you can even broadcast from the clouds. I mean, before we had to sit at our normal desks.
So good. So let's get into the big questions segment of the show, and I'm going to play our intro.
Let's start with the big question.
So the big question for last month was, what are your feelings about Dan Didio leaving DC Comics? Neil, first with you. We haven't spoken about this between us, but how did you feel when you heard that Dan had left DC? Was it good news, bad news, indifferent?
Like most things involving Dan Didio, I don't know. Like it could either be the greatest thing or the most terrible thing. I've seen Didio make projects go whoop and elevate. I've seen Didio just drag things down. And he was notorious for giving lots of freedom and then micromanaging. It depends. It's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And I don't think he was a devil. That's a bad way to use it. But what I'm getting at is I think there's an opportunity here. But I also think that a big corporate giant like DC Comics is probably going to go with something safer instead of something riskier. And I fear the storytelling, as much as it was hindered by events and by micromanaging and by kind of favored creators, I think it will be. It may get worse and safer and more sure bets, given that the big money seems to be now in movies as opposed to comic books. As for Didio personally, I could never get a chance to bend his ear, so I can't comment to him, in terms of how he works with folks. But I do wish him well, and I'm kind of it's like leaving high school or leaving college. It's like this thing that you just kind of dealt with is now gone, and you don't know if in retrospect you're going to go, yeah, those were the good years, or oh man. But either way, I'm hoping to look back fondly.
Yes,
how's that for
indeed. Very good. All right, so who was our first responder for last month's big question?
Well, we got Ron Crosby, and he wrote, not an easy question. Many jump on the hate bandwagon and like to point fingers, but some of my favorite comics came out with Didio and Lee in charge. I wasn't thrilled with how the New 52 ended, but I didn't hate it like many love to do. I absolutely loved Rebirth, and the Jurgens era remains my favorite time for Superman. What worries me more is the rumors of DC being shut down if 5G fails, and if the rumors are true, it will. They will keep the IP, movies / dollars, but comics,
Well, yeah, fair point, Ron. There is so much rumor and innuendo about 5G and whether or not it will be the beginning of the end for DC, but I don't think Warner Brothers will allow DC Comics to go the way of the dodo. There's just too much money involved. Alright, next up was Alex R. He wrote in saying, I have mixed feelings about Didio's exit. Anyone who says no good came from his run is being unfair. There are many creators that pointed to Didio's habit of putting out more experimental books and bold decisions, something that kept me reading more DC over Marvel the past 10 years. But you can't ignore the almost sabotage of certain characters and groups in DC. The Titans generation in particular suffered needlessly. It brings up the question of why they are doing 5G to begin with. His dislike of superheroes being in a happier place like in the New 52 was off-putting. I also can feel his presence in Brian Bendis' choice in ending the Superman Rebirth status quo. With over a decade of mixed results, maybe it was too long and the powers that be decided it was time for him to go. Still, I won't feel relieved until the new direction for the year becomes more clear. And I think that's a very, level kind of attitude to take for Alex. It's, a wait and see approach. He's got a very, I think, good attitude towards what Didio had done, and whether the proof's in the pudding when it comes to the in the eating when it comes to the pudding. That's what's to be.
Yeah, it depends on what they follow it with in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Kenny Crayley Jr. writes, my thoughts on Dan DiDio leaving DC Comics. While I thought he did great work from 2002 to 2010 at the start of his career at DC Comics, the last few years of his run, 2010 to 2020, more so 2018 to 2020, were not the best. The idea in his mind being dark for the sake of it did not help whatsoever, and he just did not care for some characters like Nightwing and Flash, Wally West, plus Superman and Lois not being together during the New 52. I put that on DiDio as well. Sorry he lost his job, but time for new. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Those years from 2005 to 2010 were they were firing on a lot of cylinders. I mean, it went up and down with Countdown and Identity Crisis, but there was a time where it felt very coherent, and then it kind of and it was boom and bust, like a multiverse.
Yeah, indeed. John Patrick Van Pelt wrote in. He said, I don't know how I feel about Dan Didio leaving DC because I didn't even know of him in the first place. Well, that's a fair point. Not everybody knows and cares about what happens behind the scenes with their comic books. They just want to be able to read good stories and don't really need to know who the publisher or co-publishers are behind DC Comics. I guess it's a fair point.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I noticed is when I started, like the very first comic book writers where I was like, this is the person whose name I know, like with the artist. Like it started with Tom Grummett because his work was so good for me when I was a kid. And then the first writer I noticed was probably either Greg Rucka or Jeff Loeb. And before that, it was just like, I'm just following the character.
Yeah.
And if you're still back in that spot, believe me, stay there as much as you can because that's when comics have their golden magic at that point. And the sausage is not the funnest part to see.
Yeah, no, indeed, that's so true, so true. All right, we're at about the halfway mark of tonight's show, so we're going to take a quick break. Then on the flip side, we're going to come back with the super secret soundbite. Oh, before we do that, we should mention what the new big question is for next month. What is the new question for next month, Neil?
All right, you ready for this?
Yes.
Here we go. If physical comic books aren't available anytime soon, what will you do?
Yes, good question. Because are you a digital comic book person? Are you just purely, the physical comic books? Do you read trade paperbacks only? How is this going to affect you if physical comic books aren't available immediately at your local comic book store for the foreseeable future with what's happening with Diamond Distribution? How will this impact on you? What will you decide to do? Will you try the digital, or will you go fully digital, or how is it going to affect you? Let us know. Get involved in the big question segment of our show. Head to the Superman homepage website. Under the contact menu, you will find the big question feedback form. Send us your response, and at the end of April, we will come back with these segments and read out your responses here on WGBS TV Live. What about you, Neil?
Oh, I think I'm mainly digital these days.
Same.
But what I'll do is if I get a good big omnibus, I'll buy the omnibus there. But I as much as I know that floppies save the stores and floppies save the independent artists, like, you know, I also find that the price point makes it too difficult, and it's much easier to buy things on sale at Comixology. And it also helps expose me to new things. I think out of this, I get the feeling that there are going to be a lot of people who try digital who weren't trying digital before because they're jonesing for their comics, and we might see a decline in print.
Yep. Indeed. So, yeah, I'm purely digital these days myself. It saves money on boxing and boarding and bagging and all those kind of things. I do miss the physical aspect. I still read my novels physically, although I do have a Kindle as well, but I just love that smell of paper. But, yeah, it's a difficult one to make that leap, but it's well worth it if... you know, if you can make that jump and you're not worried about collecting so much as just reading. But yeah, let us know what you think. How will it affect you? What will you do? What decision will you make in the big questions segment of our show? All right, as I said, we're going to take a break, come back on the flip side to do the super secret soundbite segment of our show, and then get into the comic book side of discussions as well. We'll be back right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
We'll be back in a moment with the exciting climax of today's episode. So stand by.
Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
It's a plane. No, it's SupermanHomepage.com, the #1 Superman fan site in the world. SupermanHomepage.com, covering the world of Superman from the 1930s to today. News, reviews, rumors, and reports. SupermanHomepage.com for all your Superman comics, TV shows, movies, cartoons, radio shows, and more. Everything you ever wanted to know about the Man of Steel and more. SupermanHomepage.com.
Thanks, Superman Homepage, for all the support over the years. I really appreciate it.
I'm Matt Balmer. I'm the voice of Superman in Superman Unbound, and this is the Superman Homepage.
Right here on Superman Homepage.
Gosh, Clark, we've got to get back to the office and call London before the meeting's over. Taxi!
With the AT&T card, your people have the power to handle business better.
Taxi! Taxi!
From anywhere to anywhere.
Come on, Clark.
It's okay, Lo. Everything's taken care of.
You always disappear in an emergency.
Order the AT&T card. It gives your people enormous abilities.
And we're back on WGBS TV live with an old AT&T animated commercial there.
God, from when I was a kid. Forever ago.
Forever ago, yes. All right.
Long in the before time.
Let's get into the Superman.
Only one thing alive with less than 4 legs can hear this frequency, Superman, and that's you.
Alright, well, the super secret soundbite from last month came from the movie Man of Steel. I'm going to play that again and remind you of just exactly what it was.
You're a pack of fools, every last one of you.
There it was, Michael Shannon screaming about the Kryptonian Council being a pack of fools, and it's kind of ironic that we spoke about Michael Shannon already in today's show. But we had a couple of people guess where it came from. Who were they, Neil?
We have Stephen Marshall and Patrick O'Neill.
Congratulations to those two guys for guessing where in the world of Superman that sound came from. We are now going to play the new super secret soundbite, so take a listen, see if you know where in the world of Superman this sound comes from.
The mighty Man of Steel has met his master. Meek as a lamb.
So there you have it. Do you know where in the world of Superman that sound came from? If you do, head to the Superman homepage website. Under the contact menu, you will find the super secret soundbite entry form. Send your name in with your answer, and we will read out the correct respondents. at the show that we do with these segments at the end of April. So get involved with the super secret soundbite. Alright, well, let's move on. And as I said, we're going to talk about comic books. Yes, COVID-19 has disrupted comic book distribution. We spoke about last week, Michael and I, the fact that Diamond Distributors had announced that they're shutting down their warehouses during this time, and that means no distribution of comic books to comic book stores, and we're waiting for DC to respond. Now, they sent out the following letter, or sent out a letter to the direct market comic book stores addressing this issue, DC did, and they are, like they said, periodicals and books with in-store dates between March 18th and June 24 will be fully returnable. They'll provide credit for your separate return shipping of these items, so comic book stores aren't lumped with these books that they can't sell. But they're also looking at a distribution, a multi-distributor model to provide them with the flexibility needed during this crisis to get new content to readers on an ongoing basis, which I think is a real key point in this letter. The fact that Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, all these major publishers relied on one distributor to get all their books out to stores, and now they're looking at a multi-distributor model, which probably makes things a little bit more convoluted, but doesn't have this issue where if the distributor decides for whatever reason that they can't deliver, then no comic books are getting out to stores and readers at all.
Yeah, Diamond Distribution and Ingram Spark and their speaking as a publisher over the years, have made things incredibly difficult in multiple respects, and they even kind of take a lot from big publishers, and I'm hoping that this is a step towards moving away from Diamond. Mostly just because, even from when I was trying to publish my first comics way back in 2003, 2005 in there, just the fact that they whack 60% off the top and the books arrive damaged and they arrive late and the stores suffer and there's no one to appeal to and there's no way to deal with any situation. This could be a blessing in disguise if they're like, we're going to find localized distributors and we're going to find people who will maybe not take 60% of the cost of the book, driving up the cost so that indies are priced out unless they get 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 copies printed, and even then just to break even. I'm no fan of Diamond for that very reason, and as much as DC and Marvel are probably doing fine financially, I think this will benefit shops if they manage to get it going, just even on a short-term basis for COVID, and on a long-term basis if they come up with a stable way to go around Diamond's monopolistic practices.
So true. And so from the reader's point of view, from the fans, what does that mean for us? Where are we now as far as comic books are being released? We spoke about digital. Will comic books only be available digitally now if printed versions are not available for the foreseeable future? We were wondering about these questions up until the last couple of days when DC, via a private Facebook group that they have with the comic book direct market, the comic book retailers, the director of marketing services, Adam Phillips, explained that here's where they are as far as digital is concerned. They say all our data shows the digital consumer and the physical consumer are two different audiences. Do you agree with that?
I think it's probably leaning one way or the other for most folks. I was saying, I was physical for many, many years, and once I got that iPad, I'm sitting there like, this is nice and bright and shiny and clean and cheaper. And I think that people who are reading physically are doing it for the same reason that, like you were mentioning, it's like, I like the feel of the page, I like the way it looks. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're so divided that it's going to be it's going to be catering to one or the other at some point. Yeah, well, so they said they're going to continue to release digital comics, and we'll revisit this issue for physical distribution as the challenges and disruptions kind of start to develop. But they're not releasing the digital comics immediately. We'll, April 1st, Wednesday, release day for comic books. You're expecting Comixology, the Kindle store, the DC app itself to have new comic books. This week we were expecting Justice League number 44 and Lois Lane number 10 as far as Superman fans are concerned. But the books that were scheduled to be released on April 1st
and now being pushed back for digital release until April 29th. So 3 to 4 weeks, end of the month instead of the beginning of the month. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is. I guess they're hoping to have some kind of alternative distribution model for physical comics by that stage, so maybe there won't be too much of a delay between the physical releases and the digital releases. I'm not sure. But even if they can get a warehouse to send out physical comic books to stores, are comic book stores allowed to be open at the moment?
I don't think so for the most part. I mean, in some places like Florida, where the governor is an awful... in places like Florida, there are places that are not sheltering in place and being kind of selfish and stupid. But I would bet, if I had to guess, that the reason that they're doing this is because of the fact that there are so many pirates now, and it could cut into print sales if you do get some crossover. Because, say, for instance, Justice League 44 drops tomorrow, and then it's pirated, and people go to pirate sites because they want to see it. But they're waiting for their physical copy, and then they drop it a month from now. All of the buzz, all of the storytelling is kind of sabotaged. That would be my guess. But it could also be post-production, because there's a lot involved. I can also say from experience, there is a lot involved in the digital part, in the digital prep of files, in the prepping to upload them, in the apparatus to get them online, and to get them into Comixology alone. Like Comixology, you have to send it to them, they have to prep it, they have to put it up there, and they probably get a fast track because they're DC, but there's a lot more steps than most people realize. It's not just like, you scan the comic and it's ready to go. I wish. But
I wouldn't think that the production of comic books would be disrupted too much, considering that now artists and writers are pretty much working from home and not in the offices there in LA now, DC. They would be, they're all around the world now. They don't have to be necessarily at one location. So the writing, comic book, drawing, illustrations, color work would all be done separately for the most part anyway. I know they had colorists and inkers and letterers at the offices at DC when I visited them in New York a couple of years ago, in the production office there, as far as the getting the books ready for print. But for digital, I would imagine most of that could be done working from home or remotely. So there obviously is some delay and some reason for it, and I guess 3 to 4 weeks isn't too bad considering the situation that we're in. But it'll be interesting to see just how far behind the digital releases the physical copies are.
Yeah. And honestly, who knows what that last step is or what the heck those things are. I haven't gotten too much experience with that. You wouldn't think that someone would have to be in a physical room to do it. It might be like a matter of the people who are there to approve it only do it when they're in the office, or it could be any number of things. The lack of transparency makes it almost impossible to tell. So.
Mind the Gap in the comments is saying, the elephant in the room may be that once they digitally release new comics and skip the store under these circumstances, maybe someone higher up will ask, why not do this all the time? Do you think that this could damage the direct market for comic book stores, and will some stores go under?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I say this with a heavy heart, because comic book stores are among my favorite things on the face of the earth, and some of my closest friends work in comic book stores and are comic book store folks, and some of my best experiences of my life have happened in comic book stores. And but having said that, and having seen how easy it is to produce digitally and get digitally, I'm kind of surprised they still are around outside of, say, gaming tournaments or statues and things that go to, like, the physical side of things. I'm surprised hasn't really just poofed. But that's like someone who reads books saying, I don't understand why movies are still around when you've got a book right here. It's just a matter of preference. I know that people are working very hard to keep print alive. So I'm glad to be pleasantly surprised, and I've sounded that death knell before in my brain and been pleasantly surprised when they survive. So I'm thinking comic book stores, we'll suffer some losses, but I think they'll come back, and it'll just continue to fight and be a thing. Because they are almost a culture unto themselves that if they were to go would impact so many people,
Exactly. It's interesting because I remember when I was thinking about going completely digital with my comic book purchases, my main concern was how is this going to impact my local comic book store? And I always thought that it was probably a disservice to comic book stores that DC, or that there was a Comixology app that rather than an app for your local comic book store where you bought the comic books through. I think that would have been a, and it probably is for some and most, but it's just so much easier to just get the official DC app, and then everything's there for you, and then you just buy them, and it goes through your iTunes account or whatever account and I think the model probably does not do comic book stores any favors.
There is a thing I read about it just the other day, and boy, I wish I could remember the name of it because I feel like it would be a good thing to spread right now. But there were places that would take your digital comic book order, and you would name your local comic book shop, and while the duration of COVID was going on, it would give 50% of their profits to that comic book shop to help keep it around and alive.
Nice.
So even though I'm being a dunce and not remembering that, if you folks Google that, you can probably find it, and it's a good way to help support those brick and mortar stores as this goes on.
Yeah, I think it might be a nice idea once we get back after all these closures and things, that we probably do a weekly or a monthly highlight of a comic book store here or there, and just give them a plug, and maybe they can sponsor the show for a week or whatever it might be,
Sure.
just so that people can see and find their local comic book stores, because it's not just comic books in stores now. There, as you said, statues, figurines, action figures are all supplemental products that you can buy through those stores as well. So yeah, don't forget your local comic book store after all this is said and done.
Yeah, they definitely all have some brand of Superman in there. Comic book store without Superman wouldn't be a comic book store, and they a lot of them have displays that are special for Superman. It'd be neat to ask them about what they do.
Couple of questions from the comments. Tina Murray saying, did they decide to quit printing comics? No, they haven't. This is the distribution warehouse where comic books were sent to and from has closed down due to COVID-19, and so comic books are not being distributed, even if comic book stores are open at the moment. So there's a hiatus there. Justin asking me, as a fellow Aussie, what comic book shop did I hang around? When I was buying my comic books, it was Phantom Zone in Parramatta. They were the probably only comic book shop around locally for me. It was about a 10-minute drive, and I love chatting with the guys behind the counter there for the most part, but there was quite a changeover in the staff. For a while there was the same people, but it's usually people who are either studying at university or whatever, and they've got a part-time job at the comic book store, and then once they've kind of graduated, they go off and get their real job, if you like, real job. But yeah, for the longest time, I would be speaking with the guys behind the counter there, and had a real good chat with them every time I went to buy in my comics on a weekly basis.
Yeah, comic book stores are integral in getting people into the hobby and keeping them interested. I mean, I remember I was just actually Googling the location of my old first comic book store, O'Leary's. It was just this ancient, dusty, almost like it was just so half filled with used books. And then there were these Superman comic books over there to the side, like, come and see me, kid. Hey, like and it was dark, and then they'd get brighter and brighter and more advanced, these comic book stores. But yeah, we need to support them. We need to keep them going.
Yeah, exactly. All right, looking at the comic books that were available this past week, and we reviewed them at the Superman homepage. Action Comics 1021 came out last week, and James Lance reviewed that for the website, and he gave it a 5 out of 5. He's loving what Bendis is doing, while most aren't. But this was the conclusion to the Metropolis Doom story, and it was an interesting one for me because Connor Kent is involved. Superboy, Luthor, and the other Legion of Doom members are not really aware of who he is. Superman himself doesn't really know who he is, but he trusts him on the basis that he's wearing the S and seems to have the hero's heart. And so Connor's involvement kind of tips the scales a little bit for the justice side of the fight. And I won't spoil what happens after that, but it's a pretty good conclusion to this Metropolis Doom storyline, even if I am still hating the artwork by JR.
I don't like to talk ill of other professionals too much, but I have to say I'm not actually a huge fan of his art either. I read through a lot of things with his work on it because he gets a lot of high-profile stuff. Like I read through the Straczynski books on Spider-Man way back when, and he's been all over the place for many, many years, but there's just something about it. But, I understand why a lot of people like it.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I've seen his style in previous books, and he's not a bad artist. Just the style he's chosen to draw these books, these Action Comics, his Superman books, just doesn't do it for me. It's just, I don't want to say juvenile, but there I did.
Oh, it's definitely a callback in a way to more Silver Age-y kind of stuff, but with a little bit of modern sensibility. I don't know. It is very distinct. I'll say that. That's a very kind thing.
Yes,
I'd say
it's unique.
It's its own thing. You can tell it from every other artist and know that it's his. And there is a lot to be said for that. I'm not being Snyder sarcastic, actually.
Well, you have that. You have a point. All right. Moving away from the actual comic books themselves and looking at older comic books, Sotheby's is pleased to announce they're offering DC Complete, the Ian Levine collection. Now, this is probably the biggest auction I have seen. It's an exclusive private sale offering every comic book released by DC Comics from 1935 to 2014, including complete runs of Superman, Batman, Action Comics, Detective Comics. It's got more than 40,000 comic books in the collection, also featuring heroes like Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Justice League. It's available to view now on Sotheby's.com. The sale marks obviously the 81st anniversary of the release of Detective Comics number 27, which was on March 30th. This is an absolute monster of a collection.
There's something very strange about the story, though. When I was reading it, I was considering this. It's like it stops at 2014. You're like sitting there, you're imagining this person, this old man or this old woman from like 1930, like, I've got to watch. And then they reach 2014 and they start going through the new 52 and they're like, I'm done, sell it all. But like, why couldn't they get the last 6 years? I don't know what's going on there, but it's also an incredible collection. And you think about it, like there are places where you can get all of this online, like the entire set of everything that was put out. But there's such a geek bone in there. Like everybody wants to collect everything of a particular thing, and this is the Holy Grail. This is the hardest thing to get, is every Superman book.
You think about it. I mean, Action Comics number 1 sold in 2014 for $3.2 million.
Yeah.
What would a collection of 40,000 comic books with things like Detective Comics number 27, Action Comics number 1, Superman number 1, Superman number 2, Superman number 3, I mean, and then all the way up to 2014. This has got to be millions and millions of dollars. Who's going to buy this?
Probably Nick Cage. That's why he's been doing all these movies. I don't know. But see, that's the thing. I wouldn't pay $10 for a comic no matter how old. I'm very weird that way because I've made that jump to like thinking, oh, these are the stories. I don't put as much value anymore into having the thing. When I have like a comic book creator that signed my book and I know analytically it's worth $100, I'll pick it up and flip through it and be like, yeah, this is wonderful because it means something to me that this person signed it, but I don't care what I could sell it for. But there's this whole other aspect of comics that keeps on to this day where it's like, this is the monetary value. And hell, it could go for $6 million because somebody could be like, that's what it's worth to me.
Yeah, I imagine it could go for $60 million when you really think about it. But people are asking in the comments, where would you store all that? Where would you put it? I mean, the insurance on it alone would be astronomical.
Yeah. Well, if you got 5 mansions or if you got, a vault, put it in the panic room, the civilization ends, COVID-19 comes, you pop down there, you close the door, you got Action Comics number 1, and you got 400 pounds of baked beans,
It's just,
that's the way to go.
It's just crazy. I mean, if you've got the money to buy it, then you've got the headache of where do I put it? How do I store it? how do I keep it from getting damaged? What if there's a fire? What if there's a flood? It's just...
It's just hard to think that way for me. I think if I had $3.4 million, I'd buy 20 of my artist friends' houses. I wouldn't be like, let's take this relic of the art that was made and put it on a pedestal and hide it in a room so I can feel great about myself. I'd be like, let's find the next Superman, but I'm crazy, clearly.
Mind the Gap says it will go for 6 12-packs of toilet paper.
That's right. Do I have 5 Purells? 5 Purells? 6 Purells? 7 Purells, Your Majesty. Yeah.
I mean, the stress alone of owning a collection like this, let alone the money, just the stress of knowing that it's there and you got to try to keep it safe. I don't know if I could live with that. But anyway.
It'd get stolen in the first day by my 5-year-old son. He'd be like, I'm going to college.
He starts colouring in the Action Comics #1 pages.
Yeah. He's 6 now, too. That's probably why he's been stealing it, because he's 6 and I just called him 5. He's like, oh, hell with you, Dad. I'm taking your Action Comics. Where'd you get it anyway?
Yeah. And, most of these books are available digitally. The DC Universe app itself, a lot of these older books are available to read. I don't know how you'd get through 40,000 books just trying to read them. I guess the point for this collection isn't the reading, it's the having, the owning. So, yeah, you wouldn't get to... I mean, you wouldn't probably open up some of them because they're just too rare and too valuable.
Yeah,
you'd read the digital versions,
and it would take forever. I mean, just even if you figure it takes 10 minutes to read a comic book, 6 comic books an hour, 40,000 divided. All right, you talk about the next thing. I'm going to divide 40,000 by 6. I'm going to do this. This is my contribution to KAL today.
Yeah, WGBS, not KAL anymore.
Oh yes, but. You see that? That's how long it's been. I'm losing it mentally. Okay, here you go. 40,000 divided by 6. If you go through 6 an hour, 6,666.666 repeating hours. The Devil's Superman.
There you have it.
6,000 hours. You can become a professional writer in about that time.
Oh, that's tragic. Well, we've pretty much come to the end of our show. If you are looking to stay sane in this crazy world, then you can do worse than checking out the Superman homepage. We've got all daily updates. We're going to be doing some original materials, some puzzles. We're putting up artist profiles. We're doing heaps, whatever we can to help you in these trying times. For people in the Southern Hemisphere, daylight savings time will end for us this coming weekend. So next week's show for people in the Southern Hemisphere will come an hour earlier again. So if you're in Sydney like me, it'll be 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, but it will remain 7:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for everybody in the US. But that pretty much brings us to the end of tonight's show. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and watching WGBS TV Live. I want to thank all those in the comments there on YouTube for participating in the show. And I want to thank you, my stand-in co-host. Lovely to see you and talk to you again, Mr. Neil Bailey. Thank you, Neil.
Hey, it's great to be back. Did I look the right way?
Yeah, that's it.
No, even if I said Radio KAL instead of WGBS, I tell you, I clearly am aging out of any coherent thought. But thank you for having me, Steve.
No, thank you for standing in for Michael, and we look forward to getting Michael back next week. Hopefully his power is back sooner rather than later. And a huge thank you to our sponsors and patrons, Douglas Meacham, John Patrick Van Pelt, and Tina Murray. And if you want to sponsor the Superman homepage, you can do so for as little as $1. Head to patreon.com/Superman homepage. Now, the complete 1-hour video of tonight's show will remain available on the Superman homepage website and our YouTube channel. If you tuned in late, perhaps missed part of the show, you can watch it in full at those 2 locations. But we'll be back, Michael and I, that is, next week on Tuesday, April 7th at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for another edition of WGBS TV. Look forward to talking to you then. Until then, be sure to check out supermanhomepage.com for all your daily news updates on everything surrounding the Man of Steel. I'm Steve Eunice. On behalf of myself and Neil Bailey, thanks for watching WGBS TV Live, brought to you by supermanhomepage.com.